the iPhone 14 Pro Max is better than the S22 Ultra. So to get us going, let's start us off with the first reason, and that is with the beautiful new always-on display. Essentially, the screen just works like an Apple Watch, where it will go down as low as 1 Hertz to consume minimal battery, but it will still be able to display the time, some limited complications, and full notifications. Now, the implementation goes way beyond just having an always-on display, but for me, it's the things that you probably won't notice about it. Like, the always-on display turns off when you put the phone in your pocket, and it also turns off when you walk away from it whilst wearing an Apple Watch. Clever things, Apple. The next one is battery life. Even though the S22 Ultra has a 5,000 mAh battery, which is bigger than the iPhone 14 Pro Max's 4,323 mAh battery, the iPhone absolutely smashes the battery life test in practically every way you look at it. Now, I've seen this in my own tests when using these two phones, with the iPhone 14 easily getting a 2-day battery life with over 10 hours of screen on time, stretching up to nearly 12 hours. It is absolutely insane. Now, yes, you do have to switch off the always-on display, which I've just mentioned, to get that level of battery life, but you can't argue that is still very, very impressive. And that comes down to it being a more efficient chipset that's powering this thing with the A16 Bionic. So if you are needing a phone with the absolute best battery life, then the iPhone 14 Pro Max is really the only one you should be really considering. The next is one that we all hate the name of, but it looks like it's here to stay, and that is Dynamic Island. Now, this is the evolution of the notch, and even though moving the notch down onto the screen actually takes up more space than it did before, Apple has put a whole new spin onto what otherwise turns out to be an eyesore. Now, it's not quite as good and as cool as Samsung's like self-hiding selfie camera like we saw on the Galaxy Fold 4, but instead what they've done is turn this area into a really potentially quite useful part of your phone. So instead of starting a timer or playing music and then swiping into a different app, then having to remember to go find the app to go and like pause things, now those apps minimize to this kind of dock at the top. You long press it to get a view on what's going on, and then you short press it to jump straight back into the app. Kind of think those should be the other way around, but that's how it goes. And with two things going on at once, it even splits them so you can get back to both of them very, very easily. It's nicely animated, and it does make what would be the probably eyesore of, a regular pill or a notch way more bearable. And I'm keen to see what the other app makers do with this new feature. Now, yes, of course, this might be copied from the LG V10, but it's a case again of Apple taking something and really making their mark with perfecting it. Now, even if you think Dynamic Island is, leaving you questioning my sanity, the next one is a pretty clear-cut winner, and that is the 2000 Nit Peak Brightness on the iPhone 14 Pro Max. Now, the S22 Ultra does peak near it though at 1750, but I've definitely noticed in, some of the rare sunshine we get here in the UK, that the 2000 nits of the iPhone, it just feels like you're looking at your phone indoors. It is just so clear to read and bright and easy to read. There are zero issues, and I mean, like, 2000 nits is the same as Apple's 5K HDR Pro display, which is just crazy. Of course, realistically speaking, there's not a huge difference between the numbers, 1750 and 2000, but it is the same when comparing, say, a MacBook Air to a MacBook Pro. Just a small difference can make a big difference when, outdoors. And right now, much like the battery life, the iPhone 14 Pro Max is the king of peak nit brightness. Which brings me to the one feature that I still struggle to get used to on, every Android phone that I own: unlocking your phone. Now, we have Apple's Face ID versus Android's fingerprints. Now, I'm discounting the fact that Android also does have Face Unlock, which you'd think is their version of Face ID, and you'd kind of be true there, but the technology behind these two are worlds apart. Like with Android, it essentially takes an image of your face and then compares it with this data it holds to know if, you are who you say you are, if you are you. Whereas with the iPhone, and the reason why we have this, whole Dynamic Island thing, is because we get a ton of additional sensors on the front, which will map your face in 3 dimensions. Now, the implementation is much more secure than Android, and Android even warns you on, most phones that I've used to not use Face Unlock because it's insecure. But what about the fingerprint reader? Now, it's, of course, is a very, very personal opinion, and one that over time you, of course, develop natural instincts to put your finger in the right place to, unlock your phone. But Face ID has never, ever failed me. I pull the phone out of my pocket, and as soon as I look at it, the phone's unlocked. Now, yes, it would be nice not to have to, swipe up. I'll give that to Android. The iPhone also has a hidden photos area where you can only get to it with your face, which doesn't require you to shift your grip on the phone to get to that, under-screen fingerprint sensor. So personally, I find Face ID as a better method of using my phone and authentication that, I am who I say I am. Now, that's not to say that the S22 Ultra's fingerprint reader is bad. It's actually one of the best there is, but Face ID, I believe, trumps fingerprint. Which do you prefer though, like Face ID or fingerprint? Let me know. Right, now, leaving that awful mess of what I'm sure is going to heat up in the comments down below. The next way the iPhone 14 Pro Max beats the S22 Ultra is the chipset. Now, A16 Bionic versus Snapdragon 8 Gen 1. And Apple was already so far ahead with the A15 that the A16 has only really extended that lead even further. Compare any of the benchmark tests and the iPhone absolutely dominates them in speed, core performance, power efficiency, graphics. It absolutely destroys the S22 Ultra on paper. Too much? Now, for those serious gamers, the iPhone 14 Pro Max will give you better, faster performance, consuming less power, generating less heat, and overall giving you a better gaming experience on the iPhone, providing, of course, the game you want to play are available on the Apple ecosystem. Now, more on that to come in the next video about how the S22 beats the iPhone 14 though, so stay tuned for that one. And it wouldn't be an S22 Ultra versus an iPhone 14 Pro Max video without mentioning the cameras. Actually, it's pretty close in most of the departments. Yes, of course, you've got the S22's 10 times lens and it's crazy, like 100 times zoom features. But where the iPhone wins, in my eyes, are two areas. Now, first, cinematic mode. Now, I have seen some significant improvements in cinematic mode with the iPhone 14 Pro Max over the older generation. You get great image quality at 4K, 24, 25, and 30 FPS. And with their very clever image processing that will intelligently like shift focus to different people in the frame at the right times, it's really, really cool. And not just that, but after filming, you can watch the video back, realize that it, totally missed focusing on something, and you can change it. Like, you can actually literally change the focus of the whole video. Like, this is crazy Harry Potter wizardry. Now, I remember seeing something like thinking it was then, mental blog post from a few years ago now about a camera that was, a bazillion megapixels. It was so complicated that you had to have a backpack with all the clever bits inside. And the camera would basically snap a photo at every single focal point. So then after you took the shot, you could go into the software and then choose which point you want to focus on. Now that seemed ridiculous, and even more so ridiculous when Apple has achieved this using software in video, not just photos, that's housed in a tiny, tiny iPhone, and not even like this big professional DSLR or mirrorless camera. So that is the first, and the second is their stabilization mode. Now, I do have to say, I'm sorry, but the S22 Ultra stabilization mode just looks really janky to me. The resolution looks horrible to me, but compare that to Apple stabilization mode, which shoots at 2.8K resolution. It does crop in a fair bit, but does give you a better overall image quality for fast-moving subjects. That one is a small difference, I think, but it's still one to mention. And actually, there is one more camera thing I wanted to mention, and this is one of the 10 ways the iPhone is better than the S22 Ultra, and that is the shutter lag. But stop. Yes, you stop for a second. Before you head down to the comments and rant and question my objectiveness as, an obvious Apple fanboy, hear me out here. Now, I've used this phone in so many different environments now that I have seen a noticeable difference to how reliable each phone is to take a photo when I want to, actually take a photo. Now, it's easy to even demonstrate here. Point the phones at something, tap away to snap some photos. And firstly, the S22 Ultra is a fraction behind the iPhone when taking photos. That isn't all that much of a problem in the real world, and only something you see when holding them side by side. But if I tap a bit faster, you'll notice that the S22 Ultra will start to just miss half of the photos that the iPhone takes. Tapping at the same speed, no difference in lighting, and this is just a minor example of where the problem lies. When I'm out and about with the S22 Ultra, for example, I've been in some, darkly lit restaurants with friends and have gone to take a photo, only to tap the shutter button to then wait 1, maybe 2 seconds for the phone to then figure out what it needs to do to take a good photo. Or literally a second or two where the phone just lags, or then it snaps the photo eventually. The iPhone, in the exact same scenario, exact same environment, never has an issue. Snaps the photo straight away and the images look just as good. And that's not taking into account night mode, but perhaps that's what the S22 is trying to figure out, if it needs night mode enabled or not. I'm not really sure. But like I said, 1, there is a shutter lag, and 2, there is definitely a reliability question there as well with being able to take photos, because at least with the iPhone, I know if I want to take a photo, I'll be able to take a photo there and then. And then we have the audio quality, and this one is all about the loudness and quality of audio that comes from each phone. And it's very difficult for me to kind of show you here, but I'm going to use a very, very specific reference point here. But when I take the iPhone into the shower, I don't even need to turn it up to full volume. I can, clearly hear it, whether that's a YouTube video, a podcast, or music. Whereas the S22 is still good, but I just don't find it's as loud. The audio gets a little bit muddy when the volume gets turned up as well. Now, like I said, it's a bit of a fringe case here, but it's one I noticed particularly in everyday, normal kind of life. Emergency SOS via satellite, a feature that nobody cares about until you need it. Kind of like insurance, I guess. And I'm not gonna sit here and say that this like emergency SOS feature is something that's gonna revolutionize every iPhone user's life. But what I did want to comment on is that for a very, very small number of people, the emergency SOS feature is gonna be a literal life-saving feature. Now, emergency SOS will let you text the emergency services using a satellite. And even if you're stuck in the literal arse end of nowhere with no phone reception or Wi-Fi signal, one thing to mention here, only because maybe it's not well known and hey, maybe it could save someone's life one day. If your phone doesn't have signal, so no Wi-Fi signal, no phone reception like at all, where you can't even make a phone call, you may still be able to call the emergency services, 911, 999 or whatever it is in your country. You just dial the number and your phone knows that it's an emergency and it will just try and hop on any network it can find. Doesn't matter whether you've got coverage or not, whether you've got a contract with them, which country you're in. The emergency protocol is there so that you can still make a call even when your specific cell provider has no signal. Now, for the emergency SOS via satellite, it is a feature that's only available in the US. But like I said, all it takes is for one person to have their life saved by this feature, and it's worth all the money in the world to that person's family. There is also one small one to mention with the iPhone 14, and that supports Bluetooth 5.3 on both the new iPhone and the new AirPod Pros 2s. And there's a chance that they could introduce a new feature called low energy audio. That means better audio quality, at lower byte rates, less power hungry, plus the ability to have multi-device connectivity without the need to then switch between devices. Now, this would be a step up over the current Apple chipset, which lets you, automatically switch devices when you say pick up your phone with your headphones in to answer a phone call, as it would just let you play the audio on that device as well. Now, if you are currently considering switching devices, then today's sponsor is one that is well worth a look at. Stop tying yourself to a browser or device-specific password manager and check out RoboForm, which is one of the OGs of password managers, originally released back in '99 with all the cool music that's back there. RoboForm is a cross-platform password manager that will fill in your password for you on any device and is, from the namesake, the best form filler on the market. Whether you're buying something online or applying for a license or perhaps even doing it on behalf of somebody else, RoboForm has you covered. Now, use the discounted link down below to get an even better price on what is already one of the best and most affordable password managers on the market today, and use RoboForm to generate secure unique passwords for every website and app that you use. Plus, use RoboForm's Security Center to score your security for things like breached or reused or easy to guess passwords. So grab that link down below, and whilst you're down there, let me know, what do you think about the iPhone 14 Pro Max versus the S22 Ultra? And if that was just a horrible experience for you, and if you're just about to rage quit, check out this video to soothe your soul instead.